So the Office of Labor Standards is a government agency of the city of Seattle. So it was set up a little over 10 years ago. And the purpose was we got these new labor standards. So labor standards are just laws about working conditions in the city of Seattle. We got new labor standards, and then they needed an office to investigate complaints based on those standards and then do education and policy making. So those are kind of the three parts of the office. I do like outreach and education, so that's why I'm here.
We are honored to join by a representative from the Office of Labor Standard, also known as OLS, here in Seattle. Thank you for being here, Meredith.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
To start, could you please explain our viewers the Office of Labor Standard, what it does and how it works?
Absolutely, or I will do my best. So the Office of Labor Standards is a government agency of the city of Seattle. So was set up a little over 10 years ago, and the purpose was we got these new labor standards. So labor standards are just laws about working conditions in the city of Seattle. We got new labor standards, and then they needed an office to investigate complaints based on those standards and then do education and policy making. So those are kind of the three parts of the office. I do like outreach and education, so that's why I'm here, hopefully to bring some information to y'all. And then we have the enforcement team. They investigate workers' claims. So somebody has a complaint about their working conditions that there's a Seattle law on, then they can complain to the enforcement team. They might investigate it. They might take some other paths, but that's kind of the point of them, is to make sure that the law is being practiced by companies, employers. And then policy, they kind of help shape new laws. They answer questions from the mayor, from city council, and they'll help make rules about how the laws are supposed to go into effect. So a lot of different things.
A lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. You already said something about that. As part of your work, I understand OLS is responsible for enforcing several key labor ordinances in Seattle. Could you walk us through those ordinances and explain how they impact the workers and explain the business?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a little taste of all of them because right now I think we have 16 that are actively in place. So that's a lot to cover. Hopefully from me talking about them, you'll kind of be able to see, oh, these are the issues that I should be watching out for if I work in Seattle. So the big four, I would say, are paid sick and safe time ordinance. That one, if you are an employee, you could be a temporary employee, you could be a part-time employee, full-time, kind of all types of being an employee. In Seattle, you're supposed to earn time as you work that you can take off if you're sick, if you need to take care of a family member who is sick, if you are experiencing like domestic or sexual violence and you need to take time off of work for those reasons. There's a lot more, but just to give people time that they can take off work that they'll be paid for and paid their normal rate. So paid sick and safe time, that's a big one. And every business in Seattle who has employees in Seattle has to follow that law if they have one or more employees. So that's most of the businesses, unless you work for yourself. So that's one. And I won't do that same thing for all 16 because I know it's a lot. But minimum wage, that's one that people think about a lot. So Seattle has a different minimum wage than Washington State. It has a different minimum wage than even King County, than Tukwila, and Renton. We all have our different minimum wages, and Seattle right now is the highest one. So it should be $20.76 per hour starting in 2025. And so that's, again, if a business has one or more employees, those employees should be making that minimum wage at least. And one important thing is that if you used to get some of your wages in tips or medical benefits, now those tips and medical benefits, they don't count towards the minimum wage. So you just have to be paid $20.76 per hour, and then if your employer wants to offer you medical benefits or if you make tips on top of that, that's extra. Okay, wage theft, kind of what it sounds like. If your employer hasn't paid you, isn't paying you overtime when you should get paid overtime, isn't giving you meal and rest breaks, which are something that most Seattle employees should be getting meal and rest breaks. If you like break something and they take it out of your paycheck, if they don't reimburse you for something or pay you for something that they said that they were going to pay you for, all of those are types of wage theft, and there's more. But it's basically like your employer owes you money for something, and it could be for work or it could be for something else, and a lot of times this happens like you don't get your last paycheck. That would be wage theft. So that's a big one. And then fair chance employment is a law that talks about what employers can do with people's criminal records. So employers in Seattle aren't allowed to just say, if you have a criminal record, don't apply. That's against the law to do that. And they're also not supposed to make like hiring or like promotion decisions based on criminal records at the very beginning. They can do background checks. That is not against the law, but they have to kind of look at all the applicants before they do the background checks, and they have to have like a business related reason to not hire you or not promote you because of, a criminal history. And it could be an arrest record, a conviction. It doesn't have to be that conviction. It could be something that happened, but you never got convicted. So yeah, there's fair chance employment, and those 4 laws will cover basically every employee in Seattle and all businesses with 1 or more employee. Then we kind of get into the types of laws that only cover some types of work. So we have a commuter benefits law. That one is for employers who have 20 or more employees, full-time employees. They're supposed to offer, kind of silly, not silly, it's a little complicated, a pre-tax deduction for like transit expenses or van pool. So that's when you're, with coworkers getting a van and driving, carpooling. They're supposed to let you take some money out of your paycheck for that, or provide you with a transit pass. So that's employers who have 20 or more employees. It doesn't apply to nonprofits, but every other kind of for-profit business should be doing that if they have 20 or more employees. Commute Seattle is a great place to go if you're looking for answers on how to do that, and you can just go to their website, Commute Seattle. So those are kind of the big ones. And then we have laws, like there's 4 laws that apply to hotel workers. So if you are a hotel worker, there's a law about you getting some sort of medical benefits or payment for your medical care. There's a law about paying you extra if you clean more than a certain amount of square footage per day. So if you're cleaning more than a certain number of rooms per day, you should be getting paid extra for the kind of extra cleaning you do. We call it premium pay. There's a hotel worker law about having access to like panic buttons and being safe around guests, and what hotel employers have to do to try to make sure that their employees are safe from harassment or sexual violence from hotel guests. And then there's one more hotel ordinance, which is about hiring if a hotel is sold and then bought by another business. There's certain things that they have to do, like hiring all the staff or most of the staff that was there before, keeping them hired for at least 90 days. There's a couple other things, but if you're a hotel employee or you run a hotel, those are things to look out for. We have a very similar law for employees who work at like cannabis shops. So same thing, if the business sells to another business, they have to do certain things and offer, the jobs that they have to the employees who were there before, keep them on for a certain amount of time, let everybody know that this is kind of happening. So we have that one. I'm almost done.
Very important.
Secure scheduling, or you might hear it called like the fair work week. That one applies to employees who work at like a retail shop or a restaurant that has 500 or more employees all over the world. So it doesn't have to be 500 employees in Seattle. It could just be like anywhere. So this applies, I think a lot of people will think about chain restaurants or franchises. This applies to most franchises. And it's just like for those employees, you should be getting your schedules 14 days in advance so you know when you're supposed to work. And if the employer changes that schedule and doesn't give you 14 days, and you don't ask for that change, you're supposed to be getting paid extra for that change. So it could be they're adding hours, you're supposed to get paid for that hours that they added, plus extra. If they take away hours, you're supposed to get paid for half of the hours that you would have worked if they hadn't taken them away. And then if they're kind of just moving things around, they still owe you some extra money. So that's one to look out for. And sometimes I know employers will just like come up to you at the end of the day and say, oh, you know, we need somebody to work like 2 more hours right now to close. And you are allowed to say no to that. You're allowed to say no to schedule changes if they say yes, or if you say yes, they should still owe you that extra money unless they do some very specific things, like they have to like text everybody that there are extra hours, or they have to communicate that to a group when you're in person. Your manager can't just come up to you and say, hey, I want you to stay 2 more hours, and then not pay you kind of the extra. So that's secure scheduling. Again, all these laws have like more and more pieces. So if you think that this might apply to you, it's definitely something to look into more. Okay, secure scheduling. And then independent contractors. So if you run your own business and you don't have any employees, we do actually have laws to kind of help you out when you are working with other businesses, mostly about like, when are you going to get paid? And like, how do you know how much you're going to get paid? And like, are you clear on what work is being done? Because I do know like a lot of people who run their own businesses and work for other people or other businesses, they have a hard time getting paid at the end of the project sometimes. So we have a law about that. And then the newest kind of laws that we have right now are our app-based worker laws. So for people who work on apps, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, we will come for that. We will come for that.
Okay.
And before that question is coming, there are very important protection that you just talked about it. And how does OLS ensure that workers and employees know their rights and responsibility under this ordinance? Yeah,
so that is part of my job, is the outreach and education, so that people do know, workers and employers do know what their rights and responsibilities are. So our outreach team, I would say some of the 2 biggest things we do, we have these big funds that go to community organizations. So part of it goes to the worker, like worker education, and then part of it goes to business education. So we have those 2 funds. We fund different community organizations. Somali Community Services actually gets funding to do labor standards outreach through one of our funds. So we'll do that, which is great because like I don't speak any language other than English, and so I need y'all's help.
Yeah, you're doing perfect.
Yeah. So I'm like, I need help, you know. And so we'll do that. We, just as an office, do our own business outreach. So we will go out and kind of go door to door to talk to business owners and tell them, you know, what resources do we have, or answer their questions. So we'll do that. Right now, we are getting ready to release a bunch of ads in different newspapers in all types, many languages, not all of the languages, obviously, in like about 16 languages. So we kind of try to get the word out that way. Similar to a lot of organizations, like we'll canvas, we just talk to people, we'll put it out on social media, we'll make videos, and kind of use every method that we have to let people know about what they should be doing.
The business.
Yeah, and on the business side, you know, we work with, we offer trainings, but we also work with a lot of organizations that offer trainings on labor standards. Mm-hmm.
And one thing that stands out when I was preparing the interview is the app-based workers. Several of these ordinance. Why is it so important for OLS to include protection specifically for the app-based workers?
Yeah, so App-based workers are kind of in a weird middle place, I guess, and I'm sure a lot of folks know that and have experience with that because you do have some control over like when you work and what exactly you're doing, but you're not quite running your own business. So it's this weird thing, you're not quite an employee because you do have that control over your schedule and other things, although I wouldn't say for certain that this is not an employment relationship. But you're also, you're not getting the benefits of being an employee or like making the minimum wage or getting that paid sick time, but you aren't necessarily like running your own business and able to provide those things for yourself if you're an app-based worker. So it's like this middle ground. And instead of trying to decide one way or the other, are app-based workers employees or are they not employees? Because I think that a lot of people would be interested in that conversation. There might be some conflict about whether or not that's true. The city decided to just say, okay, we're not going to say, but app-based workers should have these protections. And originally we had it for like Uber and Lyft drivers. So I would call those transportation network companies. That's what it says in the law. We had a law about Uber and Lyft drivers, or a couple laws, and then the state said, oh, we're gonna, like Washington State said, we're actually gonna have a law about that, and no other like city or county, no other government in Washington can have a law on this because the state's doing it. So they kind of took that, and then the city was like, okay, but there's other types of work that you do on apps like Uber Eats or like delivering things that aren't passengers, or doing tasks for people or going grocery shopping. Like there's so many other things that people do on apps. So we made similar laws for those workers so that they would have some protections. And that's actually like a minimum payment per offer. So there's like a minimum for the mileage, how long it takes, how much you're driving, and per minute. And that per minute is actually based on our minimum wage. I don't actually know how to do the math, but someone else does it for me. And so yeah, per minute plus per mile, there's a minimum. Or if you don't kind of go over that, it will be, I think, $5.20 next year. This year it's $5 per offer. So it's whichever is higher.
Okay.
You're getting paid minimum per offer. You're earning paid sick and safe time. It's like 1 hour for every 30 days that you do work in Seattle, and that could mean any day with a pickup or drop off in Seattle. So you are earning, as app-based workers, paid time off if you are sick or you need to take care of someone, earning that paid time off. And then the newest law that we have, which will start kind of being effective on January 1st, 2025, so in a couple weeks, is the deactivation law for app-based workers. And that one just talks about like, what do these companies have to do before they deactivate somebody? So kick them off the app or limit their access. What do the companies have to do before they do that? Workers should be getting the evidence that the companies have, like the reasons that they might be deactivated. The companies have to do an investigation. And there are some reasons that a company can't kick you off the app, like if you like limit your hours because you're like, you know what, I don't want to work from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The company shouldn't be able to deactivate you for that. There are many other things, but yeah, that's the next one that's rolling out.
You said this 2025? Mm-hmm. It's gonna, okay. And for the viewers who maybe have questions, who want to learn more about what resource or support does OLS provide and how the workers and business get in touch with the office of all of us?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that you can get in touch with us, and they split off on like whether or not you're a business or you are a worker, and you could be an employee or not. So if you go to our website, which is just seattle.gov/labor standards, that'll bring you to our main page, and you can translate it into multiple languages just by clicking a button on that webpage. That'll show you basically all of our resources, but it also has our phone number on it, which I am so sorry, I can't remember it off the top of my head.
We will add it on the screen.
Add it in post, thank you.
Yeah.
So you can call our phone number, and if you're a worker, you'll get routed to somebody from the enforcement team to talk to you. If you are a business owner or a manager or something like that, you'll get routed to somebody on our outreach and policy team. So we answer questions that way. Yeah.
When we were looking to this, and I think Seattle is doing much better than the other states. Washington State overall is better than compared to the other states when it comes to the rights for the base workers.
It's definitely on the cutting edge, and I think maybe New York City and a couple other cities and states have similar laws, but Seattle was one of the first. So we also kind of just have to see what happens over a couple years. But I do hope that it does make people's work lives easier.
Is there anything that you think we missed about those, and you like to add before we end?
I mean, I'm just grateful for all the community organizations that are doing outreach and education work, and so I appreciate them. They're doing a lot of the on-the-ground work to make sure that workers and businesses know what they need to. And also, our office is very much open to receiving questions. And one thing that is really important to mention, no office, like no agency in Seattle, but certainly us, no one is going to ask about immigration status. That's not something that is important to us when we're thinking about, was there a violation of a labor standard? Is there a complaint here? We just don't ask. And so for the most part, there will be no records of anyone's immigration status. I can't guarantee that because sometimes employers might have some records that we get, but we very much are supportive of immigrant and refugee communities, and so are going to do our absolute best to protect that information from anyone who would want to use it to do harm. So that's very important,
And thank you so much for sharing this information. And the work OLS does is essential for protecting workers and fostering their business practice in our city. We appreciate your time today, and we look forward to hearing you more about OLS' continued effort in the future. For Meredith, thank you very much for coming to Salaxley TV. And thank you, guys.